Good evening. I'm Jonathan Capehart in for Joy Reid, and we begin tonight with breaking news. The former national chairman of one of the most prominent neo-fascist, white supremacist militia groups in the country is going to prison. Henry Enrique Tarrio was sentenced just a short time ago to 22 years in prison for seditious conspiracy in connection with the January 6th attack on the Capitol. That is the longest sentence in any January 6th case so far, but notably less than the 33 years prosecutors were asking for. Judge Timothy Kelly told the court, quote, "I don't have any indication that he's remorseful for the actual things that he's convicted of." Tarrio is the last of the 5 Proud Boys defendants to be sentenced. Other leaders in that group, as well as the Oath Keepers, are facing sentences between 10 and 18 years in prison, all of which is considerably less than what the prosecutors asked for. Now, even though Tarrio was seen the night before the insurrection in a Capitol Hill parking garage alongside Oath Keepers leader Stewart Rhodes, he wasn't actually at the Capitol on January 6th. He was at a hotel in Baltimore. The Proud Boys leader was arrested days prior for his actions at another pro-Trump rally where he burned a Black Lives Matter banner that he stole from a D.C. church and was ordered to stay out of the city. Still, prosecutors today called Tarrio's behavior a calculated act of terrorism and warned that the Proud Boys came dangerously close to succeeding in their plot to use violence to overturn the 2020 election, telling the judge there was a very real possibility we were going to wake up on January 7th in a full-blown constitutional crisis with the federal government in complete chaos. That is what revolution means, and that is what he openly perused, and that is what he very nearly achieved. And it didn't take rifles and explosives. Joining me now, Frank Figliuzzi, former FBI Assistant Director for Counterintelligence and MSNBC National Security Analyst, and Andy Campbell, Senior Editor at the Huffington Post and author of the book We Are Proud Boys: How a Right-Wing Street Gang Ushered in a New Era of American Extremism. Frank, Andy, thank you both very much for coming to the Readout. Frank, your reaction to not only Tarrio's sentence, but also the sentences of all these high-level Proud Boys and Oath Keepers who've gotten far less than what prosecutors asked for.
Yeah, there's good news, bad news here with these sentences of the Proud Boys, and that is that they're stiff, they are severe, but they are often, as with Enrique Tarrio today, under the guidelines range for federal sentencing guidelines. Particularly interesting to me is the fact that the Judge Kelly today, as he's done before with Proud Boys, has allowed what's called a terrorism enhancement. That is, while we have no federal law against terrorism, if you're committed of crimes and they are terrorist related, you can get dinged for that at sentencing with an enhancement. He allowed that to happen, but yet he came in under the guidelines, which would have started the discussion at 27 years. So I'm not satisfied that these are severe enough, but they do send a message to people like Tarrio and others who are contemplating violence on behalf of their ideology.
So given what you just said, Frank, so then the terrorism enhancement made no difference in Tarrio's sentencing, did it?
Well, it's possible. I can't get inside Judge Kelly's head, but it's possible that without allowing the terrorism enhancement, we would have seen an even lower sentence. So that is possible. The judge is allowed to go below sentencing guidelines or above sentencing guidelines if he or she wants to. The concern here that I'm having is this judge seems not to understand that what Tarrio did should be listed in the dictionary next to the definition of domestic terrorism. We define domestic terrorism in the law, and it is what Tarrio did. It's the use of force to intimidate or coerce a civilian population or a government, or its conduct for policy or political ideology. That's what he did. He's a terrorist, and he will spend more than 2 decades in prison.
Well, sure, he'll spend more than 2 decades in prison. But now I'm sitting here, agreeing with you, Frank. Why are they getting sentences that are less than what prosecutors are asking for, given what they're accused of doing, and also given what we watched live on television that fateful day?
You know, I think what we're seeing, very interestingly, is this is similar issue to what law enforcement and the intelligence community was wrestling with in the days and weeks prior to January 6th. That is the seeming inability to see ourselves as a threat, particularly a terrorist threat, right? Our own American citizens. And now it seems to me this problem has now fallen on the bench, the federal bench, that's also looking at this going, I don't know. Nothing really blew up. I'm not sure. This doesn't look like a bombing to me. I don't get it. And they're not understanding the reality we're living in today, which is that the domestic terrorism problem is here to stay. We have an insurgency in this country that needs to be dealt with, and it does match the definition of domestic terrorism.
Mm-hmm. Andy, you quite literally wrote the book on the Proud Boys. Talk about who exactly Enrique Tarrio is, and where did his influence come from?
Right. Enrique Tarrio has been the Proud Boys chairman since 2018 when their founder, Gavin McInnes, stepped down. He got involved in politics around the same time as Trump rose in Miami-Dade County, Florida. And it was there that he met people like Roger Stone, Trump's top confidant, and also members of the Proud Boys. He realized that through the Proud Boys, he could put a violent edge to his political grievances. And that's exactly what the Proud Boys do for a living, right? And so he took the mantle here and realized that if the Proud Boys are seen as a fight gang on the street, they're going to dissolve pretty quickly. So he wanted to make them more of a political monster. And sure enough, like you said, the Proud Boys probably aren't going away because a lot of them have been running for office, as Enrique Tarrio told them. And even as their leaders sit behind bars today, the Proud Boys are mobilizing at rapid clip. They're taking local seats at school boards and local Republican committees in Florida. They're really trying to go for something more politically legitimate here. And Enrique Tarrio was a big part of making that happen for them.
I want to pick up on your quote here, turning the Proud Boys into a political monster. You know, Tarrio delivered a statement to the judge today before he was sentenced, in which he said, and I quote, "I am not a political zealot. When I get back home, I want nothing to do with politics, groups, activism, or rallies." Do you buy that?
Well, Tarrio, between jail stints, talked to me on the phone and told me that going forward, he would lie directly to anyone asking him about his involvement with the Proud Boys or the national organization. So he's a self-described liar. But again, his effect and the Proud Boys' effect through January 6th on American politics, Judge Kelly hit the nail on the head. He said this week, that day broke our tradition of peacefully transferring power, which is among the most precious things we had as Americans. Notice I said had, he said, we don't have it anymore. And I think that's just a really important point, is the way that the Proud Boys affected American politics going forward is they've dissolved the trust and safety element of our election process. And so we are in a new crisis following January 6th, one that's not going to be tamped down with these sentences.
Hey, Andy, I'm picking up on what you just said. You talked to Enrique Tarrio a couple of times. I'm just wondering, how do you think he's reacting to his sentence?
I mean, I think every Proud Boy who got sentenced over the last week did some element of crying on the stand, some of them saying that they regretted their actions and that they were just kind of caught up in the moment, or argued that Trump made them do it. But these are guys who are very good at projecting themselves as, legitimate people and normalized citizens. But in reality, they're excited about what they did. All of them celebrated in the immediate aftermath. Tarrio said 2 hours after the January 6th rioters stood down that he would do it again. And he would have kept the Capitol if he were there physically. So I think that they're sad about the sentences, but I also think that they and their Proud Boys members who aren't in jail today are still excited about what they were able to get going.
And to that point, Frank, I want to show people and remind people of a very notable moment from the first 2020 presidential debate. Watch this.
Are you willing tonight to condemn white supremacists and militia groups.
Do you want to call them? What do you want to call them? Give me a name. Give me a
White
name.
supremacists and
Who would
right
you like me to condemn?
White supremacists and right
Proud
militia.
Boys, stand back and stand by.
And so, Frank, two quick questions. How much do you think that message from the then president influenced the Proud Boys to do what they did on January 6th? And do you think that the sentences that have been meted out to the Proud Boys will dissuade people from acting on what the then president said in 2020?
So we don't need to engage in conjecture as to what the Trump statement, stand back and stand by, did for the Proud Boys. Some of them have actually told us what it did. It actually increased membership, and it actually empowered and inspired them. So they saw that as kind of a call to action. Whether Trump meant it or not really doesn't matter. That was the effect that it had on them. As for severe sentences, again, it's a good news, bad news scenario, and I liken it to my work in international terrorism during my career, because with al-Qaeda, for example, when you take the head off the snake, when you either imprison or neutralize international terrorist leaders, that's a good thing. They can't direct and coordinate, command and control. But what happens to the group is they become decentralized and they morph and transform into something else. And that's what's happening to the Proud Boys. And Andy mentioned it. You're talking about people now running for office, going local, as they say, PTA meetings, Board of Ed meetings, election volunteers. This is, in a way, almost worse because you don't necessarily know where to find them, and they don't look like they're about to commit violence. But it could be even worse because what they're about to commit is an attempt to steal democracy away from Americans. That's the concern.